Coming. I appreciate your coming to this session, and I have something that I think is really exciting to share, and I hope that you will share my excitement. I'm involved with an organization that is about to disrupt the language acquisition industry. You may be familiar with Clayton Christensen's theories of disruption, disruptive innovation? No? Well, anyway, he's a Harvard professor that has figured out a long set of theories about how Toyota could upset General Motors and Ford, and how, so forth, how little companies can upset big companies. And that's kind of what I think we have going on here. We have an opportunity. That's why I'm excited. I'm excited to be part of a David and Goliath situation, and trying to create a revolutionary curriculum that will make teaching languages even more fun than it is. Anyway, I won't talk anymore about Dr. Christensen. Nobody knows who he is. He's just the most famous business mind in the world. That's okay. But this is English. A little bit about my own background. I don't usually put this many words on one slide, and I'm not going to read it all. But I'm not your typical TEFL sort of person. My bachelor's degree was in journalism and Spanish education. I had spent a couple of years in Guatemala and El Salvador, and I had already started thinking that someday I might want to be involved in some sort of a language acquisition program. I was designing, brainstorming ideas from those early years. But as it turned out, I was made a job offer in journalism before I could even graduate. And so I went from the West to Tampa, Florida, to become the editor of a 120,000 circulation weekly newspaper instead. And that was fun, interesting, lots of exciting experiences from that. A couple of years later, I had the opportunity to buy my own newspaper and my own publishing organization at age 25. Went back after selling that, being successful at that, and went back and got my master's degree. And at age 30, was offered a job teaching at the State University of New York College of Buffalo. And so I started my academic career, and then kind of went back and forth throughout my life between, and sometimes frequently double dipping, between the journalism industry and education. In 1994, I became acquainted with some revolutionary software at that time, computer-based software for K-8 students, kindergarten through 8th grade students, and then on to high school. It was amazing stuff for its time. And that really got me excited about computer and internet-based education. And so while I was doing other stuff on the side part-time, I started some consulting work in computer-based education then. Started developing my own websites then, figuring, okay, we go from computer to the website. So started getting into that. 2001, I won a contract with the state of Washington to combine both my passions a little bit and work with their migrant and bilingual education program, publishing a quarterly journal, writing, editing, publishing, distributing a bilingual publication about migrant education, bilingual education. I did that for 7 years, wrote about 250 articles on the subject, things like dual language immersion programs, and I don't know if you're familiar, they use the term sheltered English, basically for people like me who am teaching, like I'm working in Malaysia now, I'm teaching students for whom English is not their first language, but I'm teaching journalism most of the time, or marketing, or communication technologies, and I'm not teaching English in theory, but in reality, I need to be aware that I'm teaching English too, because they're having a hard time just understanding me, let alone, understanding all the vocabulary I'm throwing at them. And I have problems like talking too fast and things like that. So whether I like it or not, I'm also a TEFL, you could say, while I'm teaching other subjects. And so after 7 years of that, I did finally got around to getting my PhD and looked around and ended up in Kazakhstan. Was there 9 years, again teaching students for whom their first language was Russian or Kazakh, but it was an English-based university. So again, we were teaching English language learners. I also was very involved in distance learning. I loved that stuff before when I was working with the migrant education program. I also helped them develop. They had what they call a portable migrant curriculum because it wasn't really distance learning. They would always have a local person in the school work with the students, but a migrant student by definition would be going from school to school to school and not always with the same curriculum. So they would try to complete their courses with the portable curriculum that the state was providing them. During that time, I formed the International Education Institute in 2003, and with that I performed, it was what in America, you may not be aware of, most of you, but they passed a program called No Child Left Behind, and it set national standards that local schools had to hit. There were comparatively high standards that it became very obvious to me right away that nobody was going to hit those standards, especially if they had a lot of migrant students, without starting their reading training before kindergarten, probably, but at least in kindergarten, if not before. And so I started some experimental work with two curricula that had claimed great success, one out of New Zealand and one out of Utah. And teachers really enjoyed that, so I worked on that. And that, again, doesn't make me exactly careful, but very interested in the subject. Also I started doing websites, and I started experimenting with them. I started using Moodle in about 2003, which is a free learning management system. And I tried uploading video. I thought we needed to go multimedia. I uploaded video, and it uploaded very slowly, downloaded very slowly, it's almost worthless. And so I experimented, and so one of the things I did was I hired a widow lady who had lost her job and said, here, help me. You go to YouTube and find all the English language programs or all the English acquisition programs you can find. We are going to, you are talking to her. She was an English language learner, but I said, you try to help me figure out, scale. Let's go ahead and figure out how these should go in order. And so we put up 5,000 videos on this virtual-university.us, but all as embeds, not as uploads. Embedded them from YouTube, and it works fine. And so I was again advancing my understanding of how to handle Moodle, how to do multimedia, online, stuff like that. Did another site, I've done dozens of sites, but iei-tv.net is another site with maybe 1,000 videos on it, a little bit different type of site than the virtual university. Anyway, so then, like I said, I've been 10 years overseas, 9 in Kazakhstan, and then a little over a year ago I moved to Malaysia. And it's been an exciting and fun opportunity. Like I said, I don't teach English per se. I do teach writing. I teach journalistic writing. And I teach advertising or PR writing, things like that. And I teach the technologies. And I do teach some things like web design and a little bit of everything. Last year, I created 130 instructional videos as part of my work. I kind of do it routinely. It doesn't mean they're really polished videos. I have running right now Screencast-O-Matic, which has a free version and a low-cost $15 a year version. And so you see I'm cutting off my head, and while we're also doing a much better recording over there, I just automatically turn on my Screencast-O-Matic when I do my lectures and upload them to YouTube. On YouTube, it automatically transcribes them so that my students can see the subtitles, the closed captions while they're watching my video. And anyway, it makes life a little easier for them. In the last couple of years, I've co-authored 7 books, and I'm about to quit my job. I'm going to tell you why I'm quitting my job. Because I'm excited about something that's happening. And I hope you'll be excited about it too. So, thinking about the current major players in language acquisition, let's take a look at them. Some of them. We've got Duolingo. It is a free site. They have 24 courses last we checked, and they're developing 6 more, so they'll have like 30 courses. And that's good. One of the bigger ones. Rosetta Stone has 31, or last count, 31 courses. I jumped over, I tried to use Pimsleur to learn Russian while I was in Kazakhstan. I'm not apparently an audio learner because it did not do me much good. I mean, I can, I can take a taxi and buy my groceries and stuff, but I'm not very good at Russian still. And working at an English-based university didn't give me much practice at work, where we're not supposed to speak anything but English. So I did not like Pimsleur. If any of you have tried it, it is mostly audio. And so I would walk to school 4 miles every day and listen to my Pimsleur and all this sort of stuff and learn not very much. I think we also, there was a comment in one of yesterday's presentations that they thought Duolingo was kind of too basic, not very advanced. Several of these obviously cost quite a bit of money. Just that audio-based Pimsleur cost me a lot of money to learn not very much. So this is kind of the and also what else about these? What else do you know about these? What other limitations do they have? Anybody experiment with any of these? Things that you experienced that you didn't think was made it ideal? Anybody? Yeah.
So, my wife's from Korea. My kids, we try to speak Korean at home, but it doesn't work very well in an English-speaking environment.
Yeah.
And so my kids wanted to learn Korean, and so they downloaded Duolingo onto their phones. And it was coming up with some of the weirdest sentences. I'm thinking authentic language. I would never, ever utter this sentence. So why am I practicing this sentence? It's just a random series of nouns, verbs, and adjectives. So.
Yeah, we get a lot of that. Yeah, and even frankly, even if you have a very good program, we all know that there are a lot of variations in languages like Spanish. I was just talking the other day. Where I lived, the carro was a carro. And other places coche, and some places alto, and some places something else. You have all these different forms of a very simple, concept, a car. But you have lots of vocabulary for it. And you try to figure out, well, let's see, what do we teach, what do we learn, how do we explain all the variations? So even an ideal situation is not easy. If you have less than ideal, it's harder. A lot of these programs, for example, hardly touch grammar. Why don't they touch grammar? Why don't they teach grammar? They actually make it sound really good. They say, we're going to use the natural way, like when you grew up. Nobody taught you grammar as you grew up, so we don't need to teach grammar either, do we? We'll do it naturally. That's basically saying we don't have any idea how to teach grammar. We're not going to do it. That's kind of, that's at least my interpretation of it. So some of the problems I see is that most of these are in English. If any language, some of them try to avoid any language other than the target language and try to teach you with graphics and so forth what it is, which again is fine until you get the grammar. With Pimsleur, I have no idea of the grammar of Russian. I have a little bit, but almost no idea of Russian grammar because they didn't think they needed to teach me that. Well, I, as an adult, would like to know why am I making these changes in the words with my Russian grammar that I don't understand. But they don't bother to tell me because I guess I'm learning it naturally, organically, whatever you want to call it. So there's a lot of lack of explanations. A lot of it's in English, like I said. A lot of not really a full curriculum. Some of them tell you this is not a beginning curriculum. Go learn the basics of the language, and then come back here and learn more advanced language. So they tell you right off the bat they don't have a complete curriculum. Others, I haven't tried out Duolingo, but it apparently has a pretty good beginning, but it doesn't go very far. And so, you have a lot of incomplete stuff. A lot of it is not multi-sensory. It might be, strong in one area, but Ken Pimsleur is mostly audio, so you don't get much visual, and you don't get much kinesthetic because you're just listening to it all the time. And those three are really important in learning. Audio, visual, and kinesthetic. Your body movement, whether it's writing stuff out or even a mouse. One of those early computer-based programs that I was talking about that I started getting involved with in 1994 was a company called Johnston's that some people know from, they create class rings and stuff for schools, school sweaters and things like that. Well, they threw in $81 million in early 1980 money to hire some of the best educators in America to create this curriculum. The only problem was they created it before the technology could all got caught up, and so it was really old-fashioned. Within a few years, it was old-fashioned sound, old-fashioned graphics. They had to start all over again, which they never did really recover from that mistake, which is too bad because the curriculum itself was amazing. Multimedia, and like I said, it involved the kinesthetic and let you pre-test and not redo stuff you already knew, or if you didn't know something, take you backwards. All sorts of great concepts that these educators helped Johnson create, which is the ideal online curriculum. But anyway, so my own daughter used it. She was a very mediocre student, and she took this Johnston course. And after 2 months of just after school working on this computer-based curriculum, they did a nationalized test in her school. And her teacher literally apologized to us that she didn't know our daughter was one of the smartest kids in the school. Well, the truth is, she wasn't before. And what the program allowed her to do was plug holes. She had this very social kid, had lots of holes in her education. And you know what happens when you don't understand. Like if you're learning math and you never learned how to do multiplication, it doesn't matter, you're going to run into that problem throughout your math career. You better learn if you have a hole in your education, you don't do very well until you plug that hole. And so she had lots of holes that she hadn't plugged. And once she had spent 2 months plugging the holes in her education, she was one of the highest scoring students. I worked with a lot of homeschool families that taught their kids at home. And every year they had to take a nationalized test to make sure they were keeping up with the students in the classroom. And what we found was with this program, in 2 hours on the computer, they could compete the students in the 6-hour classroom, or however many hours they're in the classroom. And so that got me excited about what computers could do in an ideal situation. And I've been excited about that ever since. Anyway, a lot of these programs don't have very good scaffolding and stuff. They don't really build enough recall. And again, they don't. Besides the recall, you might develop recall on vocabulary if you don't know how to really put it together because they never taught you grammar. So that you have all sorts of problems like that. Not very realistic, authentic usage of the language. But I have a question here. As I said, most of these others are English-based, if anything based, if any language. I'm just kind of imagining what your students speak. Just some of the things that I know there's some Spanish students that some of you are teaching, for sure. Maybe some Portuguese, from Pakistan, Urdu, I guess, or Punjabi. Maybe some French, maybe some Russian, definitely. I know we have several Russian teachers. Yeah.
Arabic students,
Excuse me?
my students are Arabic.
Okay, Arabic. Okay, and we got some from Malaysia, maybe some Chinese students, some Malay students, speakers. If you are teaching Chinese students, they may be Mandarin or Cantonese or something else. They have other languages too there. Philippines, they have various languages there besides English. In just Mexico, my kind of partners in crime with this new project, we were studying just the languages of Mexico and found, like more than 100 languages. A lot of them very small, very few speakers of them, especially in southern Mexico. And of course, other Latin American countries, lots of different languages. Like I said, I lived in Guatemala for a year and then El Salvador for a year. Lots of the native languages especially out in the jungle areas and so forth, away from the big cities. And just here in America, my heavens, how many different languages, maybe in one classroom. The one classroom may mirror what we're seeing here in this room. Students from Latin America, students from Asia, students from India, students from Russia, students from Czechoslovakia, whatever. They're just all over the place. And that is especially challenging to a teacher who has maybe 20 languages in their room, and they're trying to teach them English, and they don't have a curriculum that will communicate with them in their own language. And so now what? Now you're back to we're going to teach an authentic way, like they were babies again, and they're going to figure this all out, sort of thing. Very hard to do. So, I think we're working on something that's going to change this forever. And you know what an aha moment is? You say, aha, why didn't I ever think of that before? Yeah, I love aha moments. So we let students learn English, vocabulary, and grammar in their own language, online at their own convenience. They participate in fun, 100% communicative curriculum in your classroom. Think about that. So what would a 100% communicative curriculum be like? A flipped curriculum where you didn't have to teach vocabulary or grammar, but they were learning it. Just not in your classroom. You were reinforcing it in your classroom. But your classroom was filled with games and music and role play and theater and debate and group projects. Think what that would be like. I would like to be a TEFL teacher then, because I'm not very good at some of the other stuff. And coming in September, that's free. It's free. Multilingual, multisensory online education. That then, at this moment, you have to create the in-classroom part of the curriculum. But they will do the vocabulary and the grammar for you in lots of different languages. They're going to start off with 64 target languages. So not just English, but they'll have all the major languages and some other ones that might be a little surprising because a lot of the development to date has been with volunteers. So basically, where did we get the most volunteers? And so we have some kind of strange initial 64 languages that aren't the ones you would expect that a corporation with lots of money, which this isn't, would come up with. Let's put Punjabi in as one of our top 64 languages, or whatever. So besides the 64 languages, there will be altogether 64 200 instructional languages, which will cover most of at least a good share of the languages that you're concerned about. A good share of the languages that an American teacher here has to deal with all the immigrants that come to America. They'll be able to cover them with this program just starting in September, and more is to come, much more is to come. That is just the beginning. Let me show you where we're going. Already under development, 600 target languages, target and instructional languages. So basically, the students will learn not just English, but any of 600 languages around the world in 599 languages, one of which hopefully is their native language. But that is also not the end of it. That's just, again, the beginning. That will happen within 5 years. This will happen. But the people I'm working with have more passion than that. 10-year goal, 7,000 languages, meaning 7,000 target languages. And I'm not really sure of these 6,999 instructional languages because among the 7,000 are some dead languages. So I'm not sure how they do instruction for dead languages in dead languages or whatever. I don't know about that. But they have on their list already of priorities 7,000 world languages. Is that revolutionary?
Yes.
Is that aha?
Yeah.
So let me explain a little more what's happening. And again, this starts in September. So those of you who'd like to do some flipping can start in September. I don't have a classroom curriculum for you yet. That's why I'm quitting my job. Because I'm being a publisher and an editor, I want to create the in-classroom curriculum for this, starting with English, but then creating the in-classroom curriculum for many of these others. And so we're going to be looking for co-authors for this 100% communicative curriculum, flipped curriculum. You think that'll change the world? I think it will. I think it'll literally change the world. Some of the languages that the guys I'm working with, they are passionate. This is their life. They don't have any investors at this point. They're totally doing it out of pocket. They're funding it. They happen to both be world-class consultants in computer languages, but they're world-class. They're also great linguists by their passion, and so they're living their passion. They're funding this whole thing with their consulting work. You know, one of them gets paid something like $8,000 for a week of instruction in the very highest levels of computer programming. But he's supporting a dozen families with his consulting work. The name of the website would be lingeti.com. You won't find it. It's not ready at that site yet. Those who want to experience it right now is Lingeti without the H. So again, the name of the site when it's opened up to the public will be Lingeti with the H. Right now, if you want to go look at it and kind of experience it, it's Lingeti without the H. So
That's interesting.
it's still pronounced the same, but it's not the same. Let me introduce you to Lauren Zendry and Carl Klinger. I've known Lauren and his family for probably 30 years or so. A great family. Anyway, Lauren didn't quite finish his doctorate in linguistics. He did all the coursework. He was about to start his dissertation work, but he was making too much money as a programmer. And he had a family, and he had kids, and so life happens, right? And so he was dissertation short of his PhD in linguistics when he was just making too much money and had too many responsibilities, so he dropped out of his doctoral program and started creating software and making really good money as a software consultant and creator. The co-founder with Lauren, Carl Klinger, is even a higher world class. He's the one that can make $8,000 in a week of training when he has a job. That's not all the time because he's a consultant. And the two of them, a few years ago, Lauren, it was his initial passion, so he's been working on it for 10 years. Again, on the side of all of his programming work, he's been working on this for 10 years. But about 4 years ago, I can't remember exactly when it was, he and Carl decided to move to the Ukraine, where they could get good programmers for like $500 a month. And so from their consulting work, they are literally paying the bills for like a dozen families as they build this from scratch without any investors. One reason why they don't want investors, by the way, is because one of these people on that chart we saw, the other people right now, they bought out a new company a few years ago. A new company had a better technology than they did. What did they do with the other company?
Very
Yeah, they killed it. Because they didn't want to have to reinvent. They didn't want to redo their program. And so the best way not to have to redo their program is kill the new guy. One way to handle innovative disruption is kill the innovators. Of course, we're looking for people that might want to get involved too. Again, it'll be great for a CV. It'll be a great preparation for classroom success. It's great service to the students. It has a great potential impact on all of the, not school, or the university, or society. And in this case, unlike all the writing I do for academia, because I'm in a published or parish university, we'll actually pay royalties on this. I've written all sorts of books. I never get paid anything because academic writing doesn't pay. They use us as slave labor. One of the books One of the books I co-authored is being sold to libraries for $2,000 a copy, and nothing to the writer. So I'm really upset about academic publishing right now. And that's not what we want to be, not like that. So we not only want to pay the authors, but we also don't want to charge $2,000 for the curriculum. We want to pay like $5 a course, for the curriculum. So we want to charge very little for those who get involved in the in-class curriculum for their students. So these are some of the initial 64 languages. So as I said, some of these you say, well, why that language? Well, because we had volunteers to input all the vocabulary to help with the grammar. And so Kazakh, I mentioned I was there. My wife is Kazakh, and so she helped input some of the data for the Kazakh course. Malay, again, not one you'd normally expect to be a starting target language necessarily, but it's there. We had somebody from Malaysia that was excited about participating, so they donated their time to input vocabulary and so forth. So those are 64 of the language, but obviously includes some major ones: English and both kinds of English, French, Norwegian, Japanese, Korean, Italian, Indonesian. Let's see, there's Mandarin in there someplace, Turkish, Ukrainian, Spanish, both kinds of both, two types of Spanish. I don't know if you say really both, but lots of variations of Spanish, and so forth. So you see Russian, Romanian. So there's some major languages, obviously. And then there's some, like I say, that you don't know. You have to understand the background to understand why the heck they would be among the first 64. These are the other instructional languages. So those ones are target languages. They're also instructional languages. And then in addition to that, again, based largely on our volunteers helping us, we have these additional instructional languages. So altogether, there'll be this plus the 64, so there's almost 200 instructional languages for our 64 target languages. And again, not all these are real obvious. How many Cherokee students are we going to have? I don't know. But somebody got excited about inputting vocabulary for Cherokee, and so it will be one of our nearly 200 instructional languages. You see some others up there. You kind of, again, maybe scratch your head a little bit. Kurd from Kyrgyzstan, that's part of where I was working. Anyway, so but still a lot of languages, and we did try to look at what languages are being used in our classrooms here, and trying to see what time it is. What time do we have?
It's about 7 to 11.
And we were to start in at 11, right? Okay, so let me just go quickly through a couple of slides here then. I don't have time.
Finish around 11-ish.
Yeah. Here I mentioned that they're already starting work on 600 other languages. Some of these actually, I see one is already done, but there's some others, well, I guess they're including the ones that were done. But these were the first 600 that they were looking at. Some are already being completed. Here's some more of those first 600. So lots and lots of languages. Lots of languages. You wouldn't be doing this if you didn't have a labor of love, because some of these will not be financially viable languages. But they want to resurrect the dead. They want to do all sorts of stuff with this program.
Can you pause it?
Yeah. While he's changing it, though, I will just notice what's up here. This is, in brief, what their anatomy of a lesson. And so you can see that each lesson has about 25 to 30 words. 10 lessons for our course. They have 10 courses, plus they're building literature courses and linguistic courses. Okay. Some of this, these are from their notes, so they're kind of hard to understand. For example, number 3 is Chitiri Pik. Chitiri is 4 in Russian. So they just, so you get to see 4 pictures, you have to pick one with the right word.
This is the incorrect spelling.
So this is kind of multilingual sort of notes that they've made.
There's spelling mistake.
Yeah, well, like I said, this is just for their own notes, but I copied it anyway for my slide. Anyone has to rewrite it all. So, but these are notes and what they teach in through their each course. So, actually, through each lesson, I guess that'd be the whole course. So through it, they start with lesson obvious, where it's just kind of matching a word with an obvious picture. So you start introduce them to the word, and then it gets more complicated, and then pretty soon they're writing the words out that match the pictures, and pretty soon they're writing whole sentences with the words, and so they go through quite a number of steps to make sure they understand the word, that they can use it in a dialogic fashion, that through all these different activities they're memorizing the word. I need to go fast now. These are some of the different lessons within a particular course. So from introduction to, anyway, some of the grammar they'll cover. And sorry, we'll make the PowerPoint available to people if they want it. So in the first 10 courses, there's about 250 to 300 words in each course, times 10. So you get a total vocabulary in the first 10 courses of 2,500 to 3,000 words, and then you go to the literature courses, and the linguistic course, and then we'll have some professional courses on top of that, like journalism, for example. Multimedia, they can be accessed from any internet device. And also it allows teachers and even the students to do some customization of their own learning. There's individual tracking and review. They can review anything they've done, and once they've done it, they have what they call blazing learning notes, where if they miss a word, they keep missing that word. They click on a little sign of a fire. I don't know why fire, but they did. And that puts that word into their own personal database to review. And they can write a note in with it as well. Maybe something to help them remember why they keep missing this word, to help them learn that vocabulary they're missing. They have, at the end of each lesson, they can print out what they learned in that lesson, so they can study the hard copy if they want to. They can even upload their own literature. They can put in some literature, and it'll tell them, these words you already know, these words you don't know. And so you can upload your own literature as part of your customization. You as a teacher or you as a student can do that. And again, like I say, teachers can add content. Just to give you a quick idea, this is the lesson 0 of Persian. Just as an example, if you're an American student wanting to learn Persian, and they don't want to teach you any grammar or their alphabet or anything else, you're not going to be real good in Persian very soon, because this is a very different language from English. And so you start looking at their alphabet and how they put their words together, and I don't want to do this. This is painful. But at least they explain it in your own language. In anybody's language, they teach you about Persian in their lesson 0. So you know how to get started and know what you're aiming at, what's going to happen as you proceed. And they ask you to start practicing the letters of the new alphabet that you're not familiar with, and how to read it, and so forth. And then they start testing you on that to see, what does that say? I don't know. I didn't take the lesson yet. Here's one for Russian. So they start teaching you the Russian, the Cyrillic alphabet, and how do you handle the Cyrillic. Again, for a lot of us, this is really strange stuff. And if they don't explain it to us in our language, we're not going to understand. It's going to take us a while to get it. And so here's a word in Russian. And so you have to figure out, after you've done, this would be the end of lesson 0 before you actually get into the vocabulary development. But you're going to get some instruction with lesson 0 as to how to even approach learning Russian, because it's different. This is Spanish, and so this is part of the lesson obvious, where maybe this is a little bit more advanced to that. Oh, no, I guess it is. Yeah, obvious. Is this es esto Oh, somebody put some, anyway, don't have that corrected yet. Oh, this is Spanish. What is it? Spanish and something else. That's so. I don't know. That was not corrected yet. I'm not sure what they're teaching the instructional languages on that one. But anyway, it's still part of the lesson obvious. So just to wrap this up, I'm just go through here with a few final thoughts. But what would you do in class if this taught all your vocabulary and grammar for you? You can think about that. Think about what you would do in class if the students came in and they knew what words they already had to take this lesson, so they're becoming acquainted with this vocabulary, they've learned this grammar. Now you in class can get them to start using it. It changes the whole nature of being a teacher if they're learning this stuff someplace else. Anybody know Covey's 8th habit of highly effective people? His book is 7 habits. What's the 8th one? Basically, it's passion. It's passion. Lauren and Carl have passion. They've dedicated their life to this. They are a very passionate people about doing this. I have enough passion that I'm putting my job for this. I like being a university professor. This is an opportunity of a lifetime to be something that could change the world. So I'm putting my job as of September 1st. He already has volunteers that have passion of developing this database. And we hope that we can find people to help be part of a brainstorm team because they have passion, and people to be co-editors and co-authors because they have passion. And so there's my email address if people feel some passion about this. Maybe co-authors will be doing adding 5 more lessons to a 10-lesson course. Each lesson currently has 10 lessons. I created one for my work here with Teach English Now about homeless people. So I created vocabulary stuff for homeless about the theme of homeless people, and so I had to create some more online content because it still wanted to be part of a flipped curriculum. So I created online content for it as well, and that's what our co-authors would do. But think about how many, in a world of 10 billion people, how many people we could reach with it. And we're thinking we could reach 100 million, get involved in this, maybe 200, who knows how many we can reach with this if we do it right. So hopefully you'll tell us how you think we can do it even better, that you maybe go to Ligeti without the H and experience it. And if you're interested in being involved somehow, maybe with, again, we need volunteers to develop the databases. We need people on a brainstorm team to help us think, how do we do this better? We need co-authors. Let me know if you feel some passion. And there's my address, Ken at iei-tv.net. One of my many addresses from one of my many websites. So, thank you. Thanks for coming, and I hope you had an aha experience, and maybe you feel some passion. Maybe somebody will help get involved with this. Thank you.